The time is at hand.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
One of the many spirits said to haunt the area.
We'll have to prepare for the next one. That will get attention this time.
Unknown animal attack.
We need a great reset.
Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen.
Welcome to In Dark Places. I'm sitting atop 659 feet in the Appalachian Mountains, barefoot, listening to the frogs in West Virginia. We used to not hear the frogs until like March or April, but springtime comes in February now, so I'm enjoying it. It's a kind of a double-edged sword. I'm against all the weather modification, but I really hate wintertime. Now here is the Weekend Woke. I found one. The Weekend Woke. Physicists propose blasting moon dust into space to fix climate change. By Lauren Leffer. Thanks, Lauren. Don't worry about climate change. The theoretical astrophysicists are here to fix it with lunar dust and moon cannons. In case you haven't noticed, things are getting a bit desperate when it comes to climate change. We need global solutions and meaningful action. As of yesterday, but our political leaders and corporate overlords alike are mostly doubling down on the status quo. Enter theoretical physicists. A group of researchers from the University of Utah believe they've hit a possible fix from the ongoing human-caused warming of Earth. And buckle up for this one. Their cutting-edge proposed solution is to shoot millions of metric tons of dust into Earth's orbit every year to partially block out the sun's rays, thus cooling the planet. I don't know. They've been going on about the climate change since we're in the 60s, 70s, something like that, and it never really changed until just like the last few years, and now all of a sudden it's just increased tenfold or whatever you want to call it. Seems a little fishy to me. Why would it just be speeding up like this out of the blue, and they've been studying it all these years? Oh yeah, because they didn't have the technology to do it back then, but they do now. They've been working on this narrative for many decades, and Al Gore is probably just tickled pink about all this. And here is the Nicolas Cage meltdown of the week.
Cold beer? Fire isn't the worst part. It's the video feed. It's not about your suffering. Your burning. It's about the suffering of those you love, because that's all you see in full detail. And there's nothing you can do to shut it off. My daughter was 16 when I got shot. I watched her weep. I watched her curse me. I watched her join that cult. I watched the murders. My tree-hugging, sandal-wearing son-in-law first, and then my daughter. Burning is nothing compared to watching your child's head being torn off. Thank you, Webster. I don't believe I'll be having that beer just now. Not unless I'm drinking it from Jonah King's skull.
Breaking cryptid news. Alleged sighting of mythical creature in Philippines causes concern about 2023. 2023 has had a series of events that have left people concerned, and the latest one to make it to the list is the alleged sighting of a mythical creature in the Philippines. In the past, theories about the world coming to an end, aliens invading the Earth, and others have been circulating on social media channels such as TikTok, Twitter, and more. Now, some seem convinced that mythical creatures might be coming back to life, and the fears around this have been growing. The news about the alleged sighting of the mythical creature was first sparked on Thursday, February 16th. The residents of Sitio Manga, Barangay Dumlag in Talisay City, Philippines, claimed that the mythical creature known as Manananggal, a folklore creature that appears to have bat-like features, visits the place every night. The news did not take long to spread like wildfire as the residents feared for their safety. However, the police urged everyone not to spread any misinformation. As of now, there is no proof of this, and it appears to be mere speculation. Police Lieutenant Colonel Randy Cabales, chief of the Talisay City Police Station, confirmed that an investigation is ongoing. What we know about this Manananggal guy? It's a mythical creature from Philippine folklore, and they are often referred to as a female witch or a monster who has the ability to detach their lower and upper body. The folklore claims that this creature is able to grow wings at night as they step out hunting for food. The myth alleges that the creature often looks for pregnant women and their unborn children. The theory also suggests that the lower part of the Mananangals is usually left behind as the upper body hunts at night. It is believed that spreading ash or salt on the lower part of the creature can cause its death. The folklore also points out that Manananggal is vulnerable to sunlight and thus only hunts at night. While the news about the mythical creature is a rumor, people are not too happy to hear this. It did not take long for social media users to express their frustration. One user wrote, "2023 feels like a fever dream so far." Another added, "I'm gonna need an extra bingo card this year." God, this is gonna be a long year," read one more. And "I'm so done. When I found out this aliens thing wasn't a joke, I was so meh. Like they could take me with them and I'd be fine," wrote another user. "Okay, who didn't yell out Jumanji at the end of 2022? Joked another. Anyways, the search continues. This is Mr. Haunted for your In Dark Places Cryptid Corner breaking news for this week.
Thanks, Jimmy. Good stuff. I came across this interesting little story about Chanctonbury Ring out in Sussex. So I'm going to read that this week. Mysterious disappearances, attacks by strange powers, UFO sightings, and peculiar occult practices all have occurred in or near the ancient Sussex site of Chanctonbury Ring by Toyne Newton. Thanks, Toyne. Is there an unidentified force associated with ancient pathways and ley lines whose energy is capable of killing people? This seems an outlandish suggestion. But if the other peculiar phenomenon that occur in and around the ancient earthwork of Chanctonbury Ring in Sussex, England, are anything to go by, there may indeed be something in it. Consider first the case of the Reverend Neil Snelling, former vicar of Clampton Church, who was last seen in August 1978, heading in the direction of the nearby Clampton Wood. In the summer of 1981, his remains at last came to light. They were discovered by a Canadian hiker named Mike Rain. Thanks, Mike. He was flying to Africa the next day, but sent the local police the Reverend Snelling's wallet and a map of the woods showing where the body could be found. From medical records and from the watch and ring worn by the corpse, positive identification was made of the dead vicar. At the inquest in 1981, the coroner, Mr. Mark Calvert Lee, said it was impossible to tell how the Reverend Snelling had died, and an open verdict was returned. One of the odder aspects of the case was that searchers claimed to have gone over that area with a fine-tooth comb, only somehow to miss the remains. Equally unsettling was the disappearance of police constable Peter Nobby Goldsmith in 1972. On June 6, he checked in as usual at the Steyning police station, which is just 2 miles from Chanctonbury. An international athlete and former guardsman, he was 6 feet 6 inches tall and an extremely fit man. But later that day, he went for a walk in the woods and was never seen alive again. Intensive searches were made. At one time, it is recorded 30 police, 10 tracker dogs, many horsemen, and a helicopter were all deployed in an exhaustive search of the area. Every inch of the land was gone over several times, but to no avail. Then 6 months later, on December 13, 1972, his body was found near Chanctonbury Ring, not very far from where the Reverend Snelling had been found. In 1981, a third person fell victim to the mysterious area. On November 14th, the corpse of Mrs. Julian Matthews, who had been reported missing on September 28th, was found near Winston House, once again close to where the Reverend Neil Snelling's skeleton had been discovered. During the 2 months she was missing, several searches were made of the area, and when the beaters from the pheasant shoot at nearby Winston Estate found the body, they insisted that they had been over the exact spot only 2 weeks before and had seen nothing. The post-mortem failed to determine the cause of death because the body had suffered an unusual degree of decomposition. Needless to say, no one knows quite why. Is the pattern that seems to emerge from these deaths one of mere coincidence, or is there an unknown and deadly force at work? What attracted these 3 very different people, a retired vicar, policeman, and a housewife, to this particular area in the first place? Many theories have been put forward, some of them quite bizarre. Because of the persistent UFO sightings recorded in the vicinity of Chanctonbury, it has even been suggested that these people were snatched by aliens and later returned. But there is one common factor. It appears that each of them was suffering to some extent from depression. Not only that, according to the local investigator, Dave Stringer, all 3 bodies were found on ley lines. The question then is whether there was some kind of mutual attraction between some force generated by the leys and their state of mind. Could such a force be capable of exerting an evil influence as a black stream? Could it somehow take over an individual whose mind is temporarily apparent. Certainly the area is one in which some very strange forces seem to have been at work, and many people have reported frightening symptoms and occurrences when in the vicinity of Chanctonbury Ring. Chanctonbury is a hill on the South Downs, approximately 700 feet above sea level, crowned with a ring of beech trees. It is steeped in occult history and has long been associated with witchcraft, unseen forces, and laterally with UFO sightings. On the outside, the ring of trees seems perfectly normal, and yet, on entering, one is immediately aware of an uncanny silence, for no birds or animals are found there. Dead and dying trees, some fenced off, and to the air of general decay, as if stepping from the outside to the inside of the ring, has deposited one in a strange and different world. Among the many people who have had terrifying experiences here is Dave Stringer, who runs the Southern Paranormal Investigation Group. One night in June of 1966, he and a group of members decided to spend the night there. They arrived early at about 9:30 p.m. After a while, a group of motorcyclists with girl pillion riders turned up. Stringer's group had built a campfire in the center of the ring, and the motorcyclists stayed chatting with them before moving off on their own to another part of the ring. As the night was advancing, Stringer thought it expedient to make a circle of protection, which he did with powdered chalk, incense, and holy water. He and his group then sat within it. Shortly after midnight, they heard a kind of crackling, distantly at first, but becoming louder and presently accompanied by a gusting wind. Although on looking outside the circle of trees, it was still a clear, calm summer's night. There hadn't, until that moment, been a hint of a breeze. This lasted for about half an hour, when at 45 minutes past midnight, the group noticed a form moving around outside the circle of trees. Suddenly they heard a woman wailing as if in pain, followed almost immediately by the cry of a baby. This went on for over half an hour, and then there was silence. The form, which had been constantly encircling the trees, was no longer to be seen. Until 2 a.m., there was a period of quiet. Then the group heard a church organ playing and some form of chanting. At the same time, they all complained of feeling intense pressure, but they managed not to panic. After a while, the feeling subsided, but shortly after this, at about 2:30 a.m., one of the motorcyclists came running up to them, saying they had experienced something really evil on the other side of the ring, and that the others were petrified. The motorcyclists then promptly left the area. Dave Stringer and his group stayed until daylight, but all said they felt extreme aches and pains and headaches. It was only when they got outside of the circle of trees that these pains left them. Among other groups who have kept an all-night vigil at this mysterious site is the Sussex Sky Watchers, a UFO research group. On June 15, 1968, in the early hours of Sunday morning, one of the members was walking around inside the ring of trees when he suddenly fell to the ground, screaming for help, having lost the use of his limbs. On running to his aid, his companions experienced a similar form of paralysis, as if they had all suddenly been hit by a force that robbed them of the use of their arms and legs. Fortunately, within a few minutes everyone recovered, and there was no ill effects. Another all-night vigil was led by Charles Walker, who has made an extensive study of Chanctonbury Ring. On August 25, 1974, he and 3 other members of the Ghost and Psychic Investigation Group were walking inside the ring of trees at approximately 11 p.m. when one member, William Lincoln, was levitated by a force that took him some 5 feet into the air, where he hung suspended for about 60 seconds before being released and crashing back to the ground. During this terrifying experience, he was pleading with the unseen force and crying, "No more, no more." Lincoln's back was hurt when the brief period of levitation ceased, and he was so badly shaken he felt unable to talk about the happening afterward, beyond refusing to go back to Chanctonbury ever again. The whole episode was experienced by the other members of the group, Charles Walker, Dave Willis, and Richard Walker. In September 1979, Charles Walker returned to make a further investigation, this time with Dave Stringer, Dave Willis, and Paul Glover. As they were approaching the spot where William Lincoln had been levitated and where the others had experienced paralysis of their limbs, Dave Willis was suddenly knocked down to the ground by an invisible force. While Charles and Paul were endeavoring to calm him, Dave Stringer was looking for the crucifix he always wore around his neck, attached to a chain, and which he had missed at the time Willis was knocked down. After searching for a few minutes, Dave Stringer saw the crucifix on the ground. When he picked it up, it was burning hot, as if it had been placed in an open fire. He also noticed that the link fixing the chain around the neck had been twisted and broken, as if it had been wrenched off. Yet none of the others had been close to him at the time. So something very peculiar seems to be at work in the ring. Does it have any bearing on the 3 unexplained deaths? And does the persistent local UFO phenomenon have anything to do with the mystery? Is there a force in the earth that creates inexplicable phenomenon? Or are the weird events like those associated with Chanctonbury Ring part of a little understood interaction between the landscape and the mind?
I have to admit it's frustrating having a bladder control problem.
Because my real problem is finding the protection I need.
You need Depend for discreet, effective protection. This form-fitting Depend undergarment works so well because of a fluid-locking layer. Watch how this remarkable layer actually locks fluid in and won't let go.
The name says it all.
Depend. Discreet, effective protection.
The second chapter of Peculiar Incidents Associated with Chanctonbury Ring concerns the numerous UFO sightings that have occurred in that area. One such place took place during the night of October 31st, 1972, at about 10:45 p.m. A Mr. Simpson of Worthing was out walking with 2 friends at Chanctonbury. They saw a light flickering among the clump of trees, and at first thought it must be a bonfire. As they drew closer to the light, it faded away. They were walking toward the center of the ring when Mr. Simpson said they saw the strangest object we have ever seen. The silence of the night was broken by a loud noise above them, as if something was brushing the treetops. Looking up, all 3 witnesses saw a dull red glow emanating from a large object above them. We were all 3 frozen to the spot, Mr. Simpson said, and we could not believe what we were clearly seeing with our own eyes. The object was making no sound whatsoever, apart from the noise when it brushed against the treetops, and although we watched it intently, we did not break from the cover of the trees, as we felt safer whilst we were under them. As the object moved away, Mr. Simpson said they could see the top of the craft more clearly. It was illuminated by a much brighter blue light. We also noticed what appeared to be 4 small square windows, or portholes. Everything was happening so quickly, however, and the object was moving away so fast that they could not be certain about the description. However, the craft came to a sudden halt, hovered for about 30 seconds, and then shot up into the sky at a terrific speed. A similar object was reported in the area on December 12th, 1979, but it did not come as close to the trees on this occasion. However, it did spend some minutes hovering over the hill before suddenly moving off at high speed toward Brighton. In the summer of 1974, a brilliant white circular object was seen shooting up the west side of the hill, where it hovered for about 45 seconds before changing its shape into an oblong and disappearing at a northwesterly direction at great speed. On August 23, 1975, a bright orange object was seen in the sky over Chanctonbury Ring, near Worthing. The object hovered for a short while and then shot off at a high rate of speed in the direction of Chanctonbury Ring. Within moments of the object being seen headed for Chanctonbury, a local woman was walking her dog at Chanctonbury Ring when she saw a large, saucer-shaped, bright orange object land on the west side of Chanctonbury Hill. The woman went on to say that the object remained on the ground for no more than a minute or so, and then shot straight up into the air. It was lost to sight within seconds. Many similar sightings have been recorded. The unusual pattern for the UFO to be first seen at Chanctonbury Ring, traveling toward Chanctonbury Ring, then independently reported from the latter area. Chanctonbury Ring is also well known for being a venue for those pursuing witchcraft activities. From time to time, hooded figures have been seen dancing around a bonfire amid the trees. In March 1979, Charles Walker and Dave Stringer made an important discovery in this connection. While at Chanctonbury Ring, they came across an unmistakable altar formed out of a tree trunk. A 9-foot diameter circle of stones surrounded the altar. A 5-point star, also made out of stones, rested within the circle. Thick paper or parchment bearing black candle wax lay between each star point. The remains of a similar circle have been seen at nearby Devil's Dyke, where a black coven was known to be practicing until December 1978. Grass has grown over the place, but the outline can still be seen. Also visible are the remains of what is thought to be a triangle of art, which is used to invoke or materialize a spirit. Devil's Dyke is a great cleft in the South Downs, south of the village of Poynings. Legend has it that the devil himself dug the huge ditch when he thought the people of Sussex were too taken up with religion. The idea being that the sea would rush in and drown them all. Fortunately for the people of Sussex, however, he had got only halfway with the task when an old woman lit a candle, which set off the cock. The devil thought sunrise had come and promptly fled. So he took off because he thought the sun was coming up. He's not too smart. Perhaps not surprisingly, Devil's Dyke has also been the scene of mysterious events and UFO sightings. During August 1974, Paul Glover was standing at Devil's Dyke on the site where the coven used to meet when he saw an orange and white disc-shaped UFO moving around the perimeter of the dike. This was visible for 2 minutes. In April 1976, a group of watchers reported seeing 2 objects during their all-night vigil. One at 12:55 a.m. when a white light traveled west along the dike and was visible for 8 seconds. Another at 3:10 a.m. This time the object came within half a mile of them before it disappeared from view. Perhaps the most intriguing evidence relating to sightings in the area was discovered by Paul Glover. After a spat of UFO sightings in 1965, he was walking along the top edge of one of the banks of the dike when he saw 2 strange rings imprinted in the ground. Despite extensive inquiries, the reason for their presence cannot be found. In 1979, he was still able to photograph them, 14 years after he first noticed them. Have UFOs landed at Devil's Dyke? Many people believe so. Among them, 4 schoolboys who, greatly impressed by local newspaper reports of the UFO activity at the dike, decided they would camp out there on the night of July 12, 1975. The father of one of the boys drove them there with a tent and camping equipment, saying he would pick them up again early the following morning. When he did so, they had a strange tale to tell. During the night, they had positioned themselves about halfway up a steep bank at the dike and lay staring up into the night sky. After some time, having decided that there were no UFOs to be seen, the 4 returned to the tent. It was then they became aware of a patch of mist in one specific spot, although the rest of the dike was clear. Quite suddenly the mist became denser and seemed to be moving toward them. Then they all saw the patch seemed to divide into 5 separate patches, forming semi-transparent figures. They were not clear-cut images, but all the boys thought they were male, though they could not give any specific reason for arriving at such a conclusion. All 4 agreed, too, that when the figures were within 15 feet of them, they began to fade. Right up to the point the images disappeared, they remained 5 separate columns of mist, although they lost their man-like shapes slightly as they faded. The boys, whose average age was 16 years, were all frightened. One of them is reported saying, "In fact, we were glued to the spot for several seconds, and later considered leaving the dike, but we could not carry the heavy tent, and as it had cost 60 pounds, we were not anxious to lose it. We decided that if we had seen 5 ghosts, they could not harm us, so we decided to stay. When we examined the spot where we had seen the figures, we were aware of a drop in temperature, and we spent the rest of the night in the tent." Chanctonbury Ring and Devil's Dyke are both connected by ley lines. What significance should we attach to this link between the sites where so much unexplained phenomenon occurs? What is the purpose of these mysterious unseen pathways? What forces do they contain? Can they affect the human brain? And do they provide some kind of homing device that attracts alien visitors? Or is it merely coincidence that sightings and strange events have occurred in these ancient places? Or is there a further possibility that such sites have, over generations, in some way absorbed the emotional energy that has been expended within their bounds and actually induce peculiar events? These guys in this book have so many questions. In this case, they may trigger phenomenon in the mind of the observer, or a suitable subject may trigger energy in the site. If there is any significance in these reports, then we may be witnessing one of those curious interactions between the human psyche, time, and the world at large, in which phenomenon are not precisely material are produced, though they are material enough for independent observers to become aware of them. This is not an especially far-fetched idea, given the inductible emotional power exerted by many places where great events have been experienced, and given the strange and so far still mysterious properties that leys, standing stones, and ancient sites do appear to have. Chanctonbury and the associated places nearby could lead us to a more comprehensive view of anomalous phenomenon, in which it may become apparent that hauntings, UFOs, inexplicable forces, and the rest are only different facets of a single aspect of what we fondly call reality. But to establish that, a great deal of concerted and concentrated research is required. Meanwhile, the odd events continue. And that's about all we've got for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again right here next week. God bless you.